3 higher ed authors, 100 plus college and university presidents, dozens of actionable insights for academic leaders. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, is now available on Amazon. Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. We are recording this episode in December of 2022. Hopefully it'll be out before January. I can't tell you how excited we are to finish off this year with over, 130,000 downloads or so of this podcast. We thank you so much for your support, for listening. And the range of conversations that we have had have just been incredible. What a year. And we're finishing off with some of the finest leaders in higher education. I'm really, really happy to bring you such diverse perspectives, not only in the guests, but in the co-hosts, in the partners we bring to you here at the EdUp Experience, to really celebrate that we do the work that we do in higher ed. And frankly, give a little back to the naysayers in higher ed that like to tell us that our industry is dying and nobody wants higher ed anymore. I think we got a little fight in us higher ed administrators to fight back just a little bit. I'm not usually confrontational, although my wife would probably disagree with that. But I am really kind of tired of people devaluing the work that we do as higher ed administrators. So I'm we're going to keep this conversation going. And as I say to my co-founder and the producer of the EdUp Experience, we will not stop. We cannot stop highlighting the incredible leaders in higher ed. With me today, my guest co-host. You've heard her before. You will hear her again. Here she is. She's Dr. Amardeep Kalan. I got it wrong. Dean at Unity College. Amardeep, I should get your name right by now.
Sorry, Joe.
I know. But you know what? So when you come on, I'm not always on my game because I feel like you're so smart. So I immediately am dumber the moment you come on here because I'm like, oh, Amardeep has such good questions. Then I've got to change my questions to make them as good as hers. And it's so much pressure,
You'll be okay, Joe.
Okay. Thanks.
I have faith in you.
Well, I don't know. We got a pretty amazing guest with us today. He's doing great work. I'm going to bring him on right now because we have so much to talk about. Here he is. He's Dr. Monte Randall, and he's president of the College of the Muskogee Nation. Monte, how are you?
Doing well, thank you.
So we always like to level set for our audience, the College of the Muskogee Nation. Where are you located? What do you do? And how do you do it?
Estongo, Monte Randall, Jahojifkidos, Abika, Taladegat, Amadowat, Momen, Idra Ogi Doez, Joe Ili Hajoji, Jahojifkidos, Momen, Muskogee Adowa, Nakchoga Mahaga, Sahawija Imikodos. Greetings, my name is Monte Randall. I'm from the Abika, Talladega tribal town of the Muskogee Creek Nation. I'm a member of the Deer Clan, and I'm the president of the College of the Muskogee Nation. We are located in Okmulgee, Oklahoma, and we are the tribal college for the Muskogee Creek Nation. We have associate level degrees. So we were established in 2004, accredited by the Higher Learning Commission in 2016. So associate level degrees. We primarily serve the citizens of the Muskogee Creek Nation and other members of federally recognized tribes and also non-natives.
Well, welcome to the podcast. It's an honor to have you. To say that you're doing important work to serve our native populations would be the understatement of the day. Can you talk just a little bit about how important this work is and how necessary today's tribal colleges are to serve the people that need to be served, and as an important cornerstone of the future, right? Can you just talk a little bit about the work?
Absolutely. Just to kind of give a little bit more context to it, Muskogee Creek Nation, like I said, we are a federally recognized tribe. So that is within the United States. There are roughly about 570 federally recognized tribes. So the Muskogee Creek Nation in Oklahoma, we are one of the top 5 in population across the United States, at close to 100,000 tribal members. So other tribes, after you get to population, some, 1,000, some couple of hundred, some maybe even less than that, but 570 tribes across the United States, federally recognized tribes. There is also some state recognized tribes, but we're talking federally recognized tribes. So with that, there are 35 tribal colleges in the United States. So very, very disproportionate. Most of our students are first generation college students. Most of the tribal colleges are open admissions. So we cater to a population of underrepresented, underprepared first generation college students. So very important work that we're doing across the nation, very important work that the College of Muskogee Nation is doing in Oklahoma. Like I said, we primarily serve our Muskogee Creek citizens, but we also serve other tribal members within the state. So this is the opportunity. And as we know about, it's not just having that opportunity. Tinto says access without support is not opportunity. So there's another big portion that we have to do, not just be here and be present and have the doors open. We also have to support our students once they get into the institution and help them to retain them and graduate them, and then help them with their career objectives after they leave the institution.
Amardeep, let me ask one more quick one, and then I'll pass it to you. Monte, I was talking with Angelique Albert. She's the CEO of the Native Student Scholars Fund. And she and I were having a really good conversation. And one of her points was how important tribal colleges are to, and I can't remember the word she used, but to eliminate the invisibility factor of our Native population. Where I don't think it was invisibility, but she used a word that was similar, that we just that passed over or unnoticed, or not. We're not paying enough attention to the people of the Native people of our land. Can you talk about that work? Because tribal colleges historically, not historically, but some are in trouble. There is enrollment, there is funding, there is all the same problems everybody else deals with. But there seems to be an added significance in making the Native population more, have pathways to create generational wealth that that many others have had pathways to create, and eliminating this sort of invisibility factor that is there. I'm not using the right word, but I think kind of know what I'm asking.
Yes, there's a lot of complexity in that, in being more visible, being identified as, Native Americans. Here in Oklahoma, we have a different, it's a different type of reservation. It's a different type of society, in terms of being Native American, but there's a lot of similarities amongst us across the United States, and being invisible and things like that, being perceived as something of the past, and that was that's a lot of what we as Native American people have experienced through historical traumas, through the assimilation policies of the United States that was aimed at eradicating us, assimilating us, and colonizing us, and forcing us to become part of mainstream society. Native American people, the majority of us, our native languages, our indigenous languages are endangered right now because of those assimilation policies, because of the things that took place that was specifically aimed at taking our culture and our languages from us, so that way we could be assimilated. So there are those underlying factors that take place. And we often, I hear a lot of mainstream talking about about these life skills, these things that are needed that we need to augment in education, in terms of, time management, financial management, study skills. There's a whole area of these life skills, but for people of color who've experienced these historical traumas, whether they're Native African, just people of color who have experienced these issues, we suffer through this historical trauma, and it creates those disparities. So these life skills that we focus on here, actually are more emotional. So they work on self-esteem, emotional stress, communication, problem solving, mitigating self-destructive behaviors, planning for the future. So we have a different starting point oftentimes. So, and a lot of that goes back to our identity and our visibility within our communities, how we're perceived. So that, that takes on this added, this added layer of support that is needed.
That's a really good point. Amardeep, before I pass it, that you're saying that the starting point for Native American education is one of almost self-confidence alignment and self-confidence building, or prominence, remembering prominence almost, so that you can then move forward and learn. Because if you're I don't know, internally thinking about your relevance in society, how can you learn? Because you're always going to be focused on your, you know what I mean?
That's exactly right. And that's the opportunity that we provide here. I went to several state schools here in Oklahoma. I went to some public schools of higher ed. And it wasn't until I went to a tribal college, Haskell Indian Nations University, that I was able to be successful and then transfer on to my graduate work at the University of Oklahoma, and then a private school, Oral Roberts University. But yes, that's exactly right, because we're dealing with a lot of first generation college students who never would have thought that they were going to be in college. And that's, and I'm that person. I went to the military right out of high school because I wasn't prepared for higher ed. And it took me a long time to overcome that. And it took building self-confidence within myself, and just having to do it by myself, and had to learn and fail oftentimes, but then keep going. So that's what this college is about, is one, providing that opportunity and putting our students in the same classrooms with each other, with other Native faculty who have experienced those things as well, to give them that advantage. Whenever we go to these other schools, when we go to state schools or other Western schools, it's almost as if they're not intended for us.
Amardeep, sorry, I asked so many questions all at once.
Oh, no, that's good. And, Dr. Randall, I really appreciate what you're saying. I think this may be the most powerful EdUp Experience podcast that I have co-hosted. So thank you, Joe. And, recognizing that Native Americans, whether they are in K-12 or higher ed, they essentially walk in two worlds, which is the Native American world and the contemporary world that sometimes does not recognize that Native American world, which you just mentioned. And just talk about a few specific things that you do in your college to prepare them to cross the finish line and go out into the career world, and what kind of careers do your learners go into, and what do they report back on what they've learned at the college?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, definitely. That is an adage for us, is that Native American people, we walk in two worlds. We oftentimes it's a tough life. It is. Have responsibilities to our people, to our ceremonies, to our communities, and then we also have, whether you're going to school or full-time job and family and other responsibilities. So that's part of what we talk about, is living in those two worlds. We are, one foot in our traditional ceremonial ways, and then the other is, we turn on the TV at home, and then we're in the the mainstream society. Our kids, for us in Oklahoma, and that's what I was talking about. Some other reservations outside of Oklahoma, they are encapsulated in their people. Here in Oklahoma, we live amongst non-native people within our reservation boundaries. So our children go to public schools that are non-native predominantly. So that's part of that too, that living in two worlds. But here at the College of the Muskogee Nation, we speak our language, we practice our culture as much as we can without trying to overstep our boundaries of the ceremonial practices and the ceremonial teachings. But we oftentimes will provide, to some, it's even their first experience with cultural practices to some people. But we will speak that language, we'll practice our culture. Those are some of the main things that I talked about: self-esteem, introducing that and letting people know that, hey, it's okay to speak your language, and it's okay to not understand all of the things of higher ed. It's okay to not understand transcripts and bursar and petitions to graduate and all these things that exist in higher ed. That for me, I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what any of those things meant, and I just kind of bounced around, afraid to ask questions, and didn't want to look a certain way, when everybody else just knew these things, and I didn't. So it's not just the algebra classes and the English Comp 1 classes. It's our culture. It's breaking down terminology of higher ed, because as an associate level institution, we are sending people to bachelor's degree programs, and that's what we want them to be successful, to understand how higher ed works, and when they leave this campus, how these other institutions operate, and what they're going to need to do to be successful there. So that's one portion. The other portion is some of our graduates are going straight into the workforce, and primarily with the tribal nation, the Muskogee Creek Nation, and they work within the program offices. So serving in social services or housing or childcare, or just many law enforcement, just all of the programs that the nation operates. And then of course our healthcare, and then our gaming facilities. So those are some of the things that our graduates are going on to do with the nation primarily. Some are going to work in other industries, but primarily our graduates are going to work in the workforce at the Muskogee Creek Nation. And they are reporting back that, and we're seeing it. We're seeing our graduates advance to manager positions, to senior level positions, some to elected positions, some to senior level cabinet positions, executive positions. So doing really well.
You know that the world of higher education is experiencing evolutions and revolutions. You want to be part of the progress. Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, with insights from more than 100 college and university presidents, will show you how. Get your copy of Commencement, the beginning of a new era in higher education, now on Amazon right away. We think you're going to love it. It's
amazing.
That's really awesome. Awesome to hear. What is some of the, higher ed, as Joe mentioned earlier, like Joe, I refuse to buy into the doom and gloom scenario of higher ed. It's evolving as anything. We don't drive 100-year-old cars, so we don't work in 100-year-old institutions. How have tribal colleges evolved over the past few years, and what do you see as the future?
I think for us, it's always been a mission of indigenizing, the institutions of higher ed. For us, we're the experts on ourselves, on our language and culture, and so those are some of the things that we're working on. Is revitalizing our Native American languages. I just finished up a meeting the other day with all of the other tribal college presidents as board members of the American Indian Higher Education Consortium. We all come together and we meet on these issues. And so language revitalization is a big part of it. So there's other industries that we're operating in: business, economic development, gaming, healthcare. We're leading a lot of industries within our respected communities. But one of the main things that we look at is our identity and our language and our culture. So that's what we're preparing. In addition to the other degree programs that we offer here, we are leading our nation, our Muskogee Creek Nation, in this language revitalization and incorporating that into teacher ed programs that we're working on as well. So that is becoming something that's very vital to our nation and our graduates. So we can see a lot of our graduates moving into that area.
Monte, I got to tell you, I loved your introduction. Hearing the native language or variations of it, you don't hear it ever. I don't ever hear it. So I was like, oh, wow. I mean, you stunned me. And I was like, this is so cool. Do you the native peoples, as you teach them in higher ed, do you open introductions with representation of your tribe, and do you promote doing it in the native language so that people get used to hearing it?
Absolutely. That's part of the revitalization effort, is to speak the language. I've been here at the College of Muskogee Nation and the Muskogee Creek Nation for close to 12 years now, a good 11 and a half at the college. So I started as an intern whenever I was working on my graduate degree at the University of Oklahoma. And, I can remember the nation and the college and the presence of the language has significantly increased here at the college. And that's been my initiative as I've been the president for close to 2 years now. Was we're gonna lead the nation in revitalizing our language. And so I would speak to everyone. I'll walking through the halls now walking through the halls, everybody greets each other in the Muskogee language. Everybody walking through, it's Hisje, Estongo, Estongesos, and we're those are small steps. We're not conversating, but we're using the language on a daily basis. And our identity as a people, as a nation, in terms, and this relates to everything, not just language and culture specifically. This relates back to our tribal government and us being a sovereign nation. It goes back to basically that introduction that I gave. I told you that I am from the Abika Talladega tribal town, and I'm Deer Clan, and that's all my family's lineage. But those tribal towns that operate here in Oklahoma today existed in the southeastern part of Georgia and Alabama. My tribal town specifically was in the Oxford, Alabama area. And that's where our ceremonial fire existed. And we carried it from that area on the Trail of Tears, and then we placed it back into the ground here in Oklahoma. And that's where our ceremonial and our traditional leadership comes from. That leadership predates the state of Oklahoma. It predates the state of Alabama. It predates the United States. It predates the Europeans that came over here. And that is the same governmental system that's been in place since the beginning of time for us, for Muskogee
Amazing.
people. And so that is our, more than anything, that introduction, that then you are claiming our sovereignty every time you speak that.
So as you look at curriculum and you look at teaching and learning, and you talked a little bit about how you're teaching a different skill set. one of the obviously one of the outputs or consequences of being in higher education is retention, and you've got to come up with the right curriculum, and you have to come up with the right pathways for students to work and so on. So that's one thing that's important. But two, keeping students in school. And so, we talk about retention all the time, but we talk about it so. And sometimes I feel like it's discussed. We know it's important, but we don't always focus on what the consequences are for the student, because you talk to 10 other ones or 15 other ones. And for the Native population, you wonder what happens if, what happens if this student doesn't stay in school? What does it look like at home? Is for this first generation student who goes, what are they going back to? How do they move up in their I don't know, economic situations and a status if higher education isn't there? Are there other pathways, or is it, is there more significance around saving a student, I guess is my question.
Yeah, definitely. We come from a lot of rural communities here in the area that we're at, it being in Okmulgee. So we're located centrally within our reservation boundary. So we're in the middle of 11 counties in the eastern part of Oklahoma. So that's the reservation boundaries. So definitely a lot of rural communities. There are some opportunities for professional development, for advancement. There's, Oklahoma actually has a really good system of trade schools within
Oklahoma does.
counties. So there's a lot of opportunity there for students. A lot of it. So whenever we were established we were established in 2004, but prior to that, in 2003, there was a needs assessment that was conducted on the reservation, and the primary needs that were identified by our people for higher ed was, one, it needed to be accessible. It needed to have financial support. And then the degrees that were also identified. So tribal services, Native American studies, police science at the time. And since then we have transitioned that one into a criminal justice degree program, but police science, and then a gaming degree, and that's with the casino gaming industry. So we started with those 4 degree programs because that's what our people had identified. So accessibility and financial support. So financial support is probably one of the major challenges for our people. So while there are opportunities, like I said, the technical schools, we're still probably facing a lot of the financial support to be successful in those areas.
Amardeep, you have any final questions before we close it out?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question about tribal colleges. What kind of enrollment challenges are tribal colleges facing, and how are they dealing with that? We just talked about retention, but what kind of challenges are you facing getting people in? Have your enrollments dropped like other colleges, or are they about the same?
I would say overall tribal colleges have seen some reduction in the enrollment. Here at the College of Muskogee Nation, we've been increasing our enrollment. So this fall we were at 258 students, and so that was actually our largest enrollment to date. So we're continuing to increase. We're increasing our visibility. We're increasing our marketing and our recruitment efforts. We're working on a career services path, so that way, and all of that will fold into the marketing and recruitment, but also into helping our graduates become successful and go back into their communities and be that recruiter for us, as well as they're going back into those communities and being successful. So with us, I mean, there are some challenges. We're 18 years old as an institution. We're one of the youngest tribal colleges. So tribal colleges as a whole, like I mentioned, AHEC, the consortium that we're a part of, and that's somewhat the the corpus of tribal colleges. So that's 50 years old next year in 23. AHEC is 50 years old. So so relatively speaking, most tribal colleges are somewhere around that age range. So we're 18 years old. We're one of the youngest tribal colleges. So we're continuing to grow and develop. So I would like to see us hit 300 students, hit 350, hit the 400 mark, hit the 500, hit the 1,000 mark. But it's got to be planned. It's got to be a planned growth towards that. So I would love to have more students, but also the faculty. So that's part of why we exist is, we, like I mentioned, we're underrepresented in higher ed. So as I continue to grow and I look for Muskogee Creek faculty, well, that's why we're here, is so that way we can get our people into bachelor's degrees and graduate degrees. So it's kind of, I have the very, I'm very fortunate that I get to work with the founder of the College of Muskogee Nation. He is our Regents Director for Institutional Effectiveness. And he talks about building a tribal college is like trying to build an airplane while you're flying it at the same time. So, we need to get our students, we need to get them enrolled, we need to retain them, we need to graduate them, we need to get them on to bachelor's and graduate degrees, so that way they can come back and they can teach others. And then, once we get it's just like the flywheel, the momentum, once we get it going, then, and it is right now, definitely. And it's picking up that momentum, and, we're just going to start to attract more of our people and get them graduated, and we're going to continue to grow.
That's awesome, because you think about it that way, right? You're training your future teachers, the teachers and faculty that will come back and teach, and the graduates that you had. So if you're 18 years old, then you might have graduates that have had kids that are getting close to the age that will come back, so that flywheel actually will be realized in the coming years, and that's where the growth can come for those that see the value in the tribal college and then send their kids back. You do have to have a good 20 to 25 years in it, right? Because people have to have kids and they have to grow up.
It's generational change is what we're talking about. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we like to end our episodes with two final questions. Monte, number one, what did we not say about the college that you would like to say? Are you speaking somewhere? Is there anything new that's launching? Anything that you just want to say to the audience of, these episodes get anywhere from 500 to 1,000 higher ed leaders per episode listening. So you've got a pretty active audience to talk about your work. And then secondly, what does the future of higher education look for the Native population in this country?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd like to mention again, we've talked about it, I've talked about it, but it's very important. The language revitalization, it's not just our fight, the indigenous population, we're looking for support. We're looking for anyone, who has invested interest, and that's a lot of people. It's not just the Muskogee Creek Nation. For us, you look across the United States, you look at city names, roads, locations. Probably it has a Native American name, it has an indigenous name. And so, that's our history. That is, everyone's history. So I would encourage everyone to, be a supporter, be a collaborator with us, and join this fight with us to reclaim our Native American languages, these revitalization efforts that are taking place. And then, the outlook for Native Americans in higher ed, continue to grow. We're, like I said, we're relatively young in the higher ed education in this field, but continue to look out for us as we move to bachelor's degrees and graduate degrees. We have a lot of knowledge to share with our natural resources, with our sustainability of these resources that we've, incorporated for generations. There's a lot of knowledge in that. There's a lot of knowledge in leadership. There's a lot of knowledge in being caring and compassionate community members. So, there's a lot of knowledge in those indigenous models of leadership.
Well, I have to tell you what an honor it has been to give you a platform today, Monte, to talk about the incredible work that you're doing and the importance of Native American populations in the United States, and why. I mean, you've got two extra supporters now that you didn't have yesterday. I mean, obviously language is culture. Language is critical for us to have, I don't know, richness and who we are as people, and a responsibility we have to the Native American population in the United States to ensure that those things live on well past all of our lives. Wow. I love this conversation. Amardeep, what do you think?
Oh, I learned so much today. And I think this was, like I said at the beginning, I'm going to repeat myself. This is probably the best episode I've co-hosted. And I'm just going to be following everything that your college does from here on out.
Well, Amardeep's done a lot of episodes with me, so I think that's a good compliment to take. And I want to thank you first, Amardeep. You know how much I care about you and your work, and thank you so much for coming back on. Amardeep Kalan, she's Dean at Unity College. Amardeep, this will not be the last time we hear of you, will it? Because we're going to schedule you out forever.
Thank you. I'm ready.
All right. And of course, my guest today, he's Dr. Monte Randall, president of the College of the Muskogee Nation. Monte, thank you so much. Did you have a good experience today on the EdUp Experience?
Mado, I appreciate the opportunity. This was great. I enjoy speaking about the language and the culture and the College of the Muskogee Nation. Mado.
Monte, is there a closing that you can do here in your native language to close out this episode, perhaps?
Hayomat man nagi irogogidos man nakchoga mahaga saho wijit homato didos mado.
And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you just EdUp'd. It's time to
Level up.
The beginning of a new era in higher education begins with you. Order your copy of Commencement, The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education by Kate Colbert, Dr. Joseph Lucio, with contributions by Elvin Freitas. It's higher education's must-read book of 2022. Discover how you can seize the moment to change higher education forever. Commencement, The Beginning of a New Era in Higher Education, now available on Amazon. For bulk orders, contact Kate, Joe, or Elvin.